Welcome back to another episode of A Talk with Traders. Today we have another fascinating individual we get to talk with in Megan Marlowe. Now, Megan is a professional chef who specializes in vegetable-based menus. She's widely sought after as a consultant for restaurants as well as running her own catering business. She's also been on an episode of Chopped, so she's absolutely no stranger to the pressures of being in the spotlight and having to perform. And she's translated sort of that experience and the desire to always test herself to her trading. And it's a great conversation. It's really interesting to sort of hear her background and how she applies all that she's learned to her trading journey. So join me today as we talk with Megan. All right, today I'd like to welcome Megan to the podcast. Welcome to A Talk with Traders, Megan.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I am so happy to have you here. You have been fantastically active in the chat room, and I sort of feel like I've been able to watch you progress as a trader as well, gain confidence and be able to sort of learn your trading craft, if you will, over the last little while. But we'll get to that in a minute. Why don't we start a little bit about you? Can you give me some background about yourself and for all of our listeners out there who might not know you?
Sure, absolutely. I live in Los Angeles, and I've been trading for a little over, like about a year and a half, maybe, so not a very long time.
Right.
I have been a chef and ran my own business for the past 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I do plant-based cooking, and I was getting ready to open a restaurant right before COVID hit. And so we were like
Right.
8 months into development, and then COVID happened. And I was just like, well, now I got to do something with my time or I'm just going to be bored.
Right.
So that's when I really like dove into trading. But yeah, I mean, I've been a chef for a long time, so this is like a whole new world to me. But my motto in life is anything can be learned. So I really wanted to like see if I could figure this out and either make a living out of it or have a fun like side thing that I can do. But yeah, so that's a little bit about my background.
Sure. And have you made a decision whether you're making a living or it's a side hustle yet?
I think it's going to be making a living.
Okay.
You know, I've definitely progressed, like you said, and there was a moment even before the pandemic hit where I was walking into a client site, someone that I was consulting for, and I just remember I had this like thought as I was walking in, and I thought to myself, just because you're good at something or decent at something doesn't mean that it has to be what you make a living out of.
Hmm.
So like I can cook and I've taught myself to cook and I've been, a chef for a while now. And just because I can do it and I'm good at it, I just realized that doesn't have to be my life. That doesn't have to be the job that I do. Because it is exhausting. You work weird hours sometimes. You don't get to see your family very often. And I mean, when I'm 65, am I going to be able to be in a kitchen like without breaking my back?
Right.
So I started to like really think about, is this where I want my life to be going? And I started to sort of transition it into more consulting to just kind of like get the brunt of the labor pains off of my back. And just kind of get out of the kitchen a little bit. But yeah, I think it's just that thought of like you can be good at something, but not have to have that be what like supports you financially. And trading something I've always been interested in. And I'm lucky enough that I have a wife who has a really great job, and she supports me in all of this, and so I'm able to take the time to learn it. And I would like to see it be the bread and butter of my career, just because I could do it until I'm like 95, 100, however long I live, right? Like without like worrying about, oh my God, like I can't stand on my feet today. And
Yeah.
I'm a very active person. Like I love doing extreme sports and things like that. So, there was a time where I was in a Spartan race and I sprained my ankle and I had to go do a dinner party that I had been hired for like 50 people, and I was doing it on crutches in a boot. I was like hopping around the kitchen with like a knife in my hand and like a bowl in the other hand, and I'm like hopping along, and I just like I want to be able to do those things and not fear like getting injured for the sake of my job. Like
Right.
if I hurt my legs, it's really hard for me to work. So I really wanted to find something where I could focus, I could make a living, I could have a little bit more free time. I wouldn't be so exhausted, and I could do the things that I love without, fear of not being able to work because of them.
Well, hopefully the only injuries you have to worry about in trading are maybe a mouse hand and maybe a little eye strain from the monitor, and of course
Yeah.
the pain to your account when you have one of those bad days. But
Mm.
that's about it. So now as a chef, because I'm fascinated by this, as a chef, you were focused on vegan dishes, right? That was sort of your area of specialty.
Yeah, yeah, plant-based cuisine. So when I first started, because I grew up overweight as the kid, and when I was like 23, I had this epiphany where I was just going to change my life, and I was going to sign up for a marathon, and I was just going to run the marathon, and like I had never ran a day in my life. Like I couldn't run if like I was being chased by a zombie. I would just be dead.
Right.
So um, I had this like whole like life overhaul, and while I was training, like plant-based food is like what I realized made me train better. And
Okay.
so I started to change my diet into that. And as I became a chef, I would cook meat for clients. And then it just slowly progressed to like only cooking the things that I was eating. Um, and it's like, it's a very niche market. Like there's not a lot of people that do it. So I get some really fun consulting, like contractor gigs where I help develop menus for restaurants and stuff with plant-based items um, and things like that. So yeah, that's my main focus for sure.
Fantastic. Well, look, I mean, obviously, you're not afraid to reinvent yourself, as you said. You sort of went on that journey with the marathon, and then to plant-based cooking, and you're being pretty modest about it. But the other thing, I mean, I know I was excited when of course we not only learned that you were a chef. I'm like, that's really cool, and then everybody's of course, and you know that she's famous too. Right? And I'm sure you don't think of yourself as famous, but it's one
I
of those
know.
where as soon as you get onto a TV show, you sort of get famous. So you were on an episode
Chop.
of
Yeah.
Chopped, right?
Yeah.
And it was a plant-based food, I guess, episode, right? And you were on Chopped.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like they gave baskets for they give the ingredients that they gave you, they were all plant-based, but any of the other chefs could use stuff from the pantry or the fridge that were, animal-based. So there was like
Right.
cheese and meats and all kinds of stuff. So but the basket of ingredients that we all got was all plant-based. So it was interesting. It was a fun experience. I don't think I'd ever do it again.
Now,
'Cause-
and I've got to say, like I had the opportunity to watch the episode because actually I think you sent it to me, but it was great because I was like asking for it and I couldn't find it anywhere. Anyways, you sent me a copy, which was cool. But so, but it seemed like incredibly stressful. So, what's more stressful, doing that episode or trading?
doing that episode.
Yeah.
Like, I
Okay.
feel
Good.
like in my life, I have set the bar so high for like stress that this has been so nice. Like,
Right.
I've done the craziest things where I've worked 117 hours straight.
Wow.
Like, and with like maybe I took a 20-minute nap in the car, having my assistant drive me from a site back to another site just so I could get a little bit of shut eye. So like I've done that. I did a Spartan race on a sprained ankle. Like I did Chopped, which is just insane. So I do these extreme things, and there's something interesting about doing extreme things in your life, whether it's something as like simple and small as taking a cold shower or something as extreme as being on Chopped, because those things set the bar for like the amount of stress that you can handle. And I think that I've had so much of it in my life that this has actually been really nice for me.
Well, that's good. You know, you're making me think. I've never thought to ask a lot of our traders that we work with how many of them have done extreme events. Like, I wonder if that leads
Mm.
to the personality, because I've done a lot of Spartan races. Love doing those as well. I decided like 2 years ago I was retiring from them because I would do like the longer distances, and they're tough, right? You're doing like,
Yeah.
I mean, I do it in kilometers, but you do like 20 kilometers plus obstacles. And the rope, of course, was my nemesis, getting up that damn rope. Actually, getting up was never a problem. Getting down without hurting myself was the issue, because I'd be so tired from getting up that I'd get rope burn just sliding down that thing. Anyways, but that's a different problem. So I'll have to check that out and see if there's a correlation between, you know, the interest in extreme events, whatever they may be. Because like
Mm.
Norm, who's in our chat room, he was a parachutist, right? He's done like 1,000
Oh, wow.
jumps.
Wow, I
So
didn't know that.
yeah, well, there you go. So yeah, like we have people that have done a lot of stuff like that. So you're in good company, anyways.
Well,
So
maybe you should do one of your famous polls this coming week.
I'll have to do that. We'll do one of our polls and see what we get out of it. So obviously, it sounds like a lot of people, right? The pandemic sort of led you to, you know, an inflection point where you had to make a choice, and you said, look, I've always liked trading. It might be an opportunity to take it up. You said a year and a half ago, so that you must have been thinking about it a little bit before all of this stuff hit with COVID. Then it was just the
Yeah.
opportunity to do it once COVID came in full effect.
Yeah, I had some downtime with my business.
Okay.
The year prior to COVID, I had a couple months where I was in between consulting contracts,
Right.
and I was just looking for something to do. So that's when I first started.
Mm.
And I also like, if you want to talk about my very, very first thing, is I bought Square when it IPO'd at $9.
Oh yeah.
So that was like the first trading thing I ever did like years ago. And I, I would check on it all the time, and I was always super interested in the markets, and like I was just so fascinated by it. And then when I had the
Do you
downtime,
still have it? You don't
no,
have it anymore.
sadly,
Yeah, see, that's
yeah, I think I sold it at like $65, and now it's like 230 or something. I
well,
needed money
hey,
for my business,
9 to 65. That's not bad. That works. So
yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, so I'd always been kind of interested. And then the year prior to the pandemic, I had a couple months of downtime. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to dive in and I'm just going to learn. It was around the time that Beyond Meat IPO'd.
hmm.
And obviously I'm plant-based. So I was like, I'm going to like kind of learn this around the same time as this is happening.
Hmm.
So I bought Beyond when it IPO'd, and then I got really into like figuring out just the whole system of trading and platforms and all of that stuff. And then business picked up again. I got a new contract for a new restaurant, um, and then obviously the pandemic happened. So then I was like able to go back into it. So I think there was like maybe 10 months of time between when I first started and then when the pandemic hit and I went back into it. Um, and that's, yeah, it's kind of like the timeline of it for me.
Right. So doing that while you were balancing, you know, consulting and the work that you were doing, how did you go about teaching yourself? What did you do?
Mostly in the mornings. Like,
Okay.
I mean, Andrew's book was the first book I read, which I'm pretty sure is like everybody in the BBT community. That's like the first, one of the first books they've ever read.
Yeah.
Um, but and it was just so easy to understand. So I read that, and I would get up in the morning and I would watch the pre-market show because I wasn't
Okay.
a member of the community yet. So I watched the pre-market show, and the rest of it was just like figuring out the platform and playing around. And then, you know, my consulting stuff definitely doesn't happen at 5 a.m.
Right.
because I'm on the West Coast. So
Right.
that definitely gives me an advantage to being able to juggle different things. Even now, I get consulting things and I'm able to go do them at like 1 my time, and I basically traded the whole day.
Right.
So yeah, it's you know, I'm lucky with the timeline that helps me juggle both things.
Right. And so you mentioned you started with well, Beyond Meat an area of interest, and that sort of got
Mhm.
you engaged in it. So did you start with that, deciding that you were going to buy and hold like an investor, or did you start with more of a short-term mentality? What sort of style did you evolve to?
Yeah, with Beyond, it was a buy and hold,
Okay.
but it was my second buy and hold because
Right.
of Square being
No
the first
square. Yeah.
one. Yeah, and that's when I was like, I just enjoyed it so much that I was like, I want to be able to do this more often.
Okay.
Like, on the daily basis. So day trading, obviously.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that was a buy and hold. I still have Beyond. And then that it kind of just sparked my interest to be wanting to do it more often, like getting in and out and like having that liquid cash basically,
Hmm.
rather than having something locked up for a long time.
Right. And so, what's your style now? Like you obviously trade much more than just those.
Mm.
Are you now sort of a full day trader?
Yeah, yeah. I'm up at 5. I do all my pre-market stuff then. Um, and I usually trade until about like 8:30 my time. So what's that, 11:30
Eleven
East Coast
thirty.
time?
Yep.
Yeah, and then I take a little bit of a break, and then I come back and I might trade in the afternoons, but I've been focusing a lot lately on like continued education and just continued learning and putting together playbooks. And I do tape, like I watch the recording. So I record my screen in the morning, and then in the afternoon I go back and I replay it like an athlete watching a game, and rewatch everything that I did and figure out how I can do better the next time. Um, so I don't trade. I wouldn't say I trade the entire day anymore. I used to, because I was just trying to figure everything out, right? Like
Right.
when you're new, you just need to be like in there, like just thrown into the fire and just taking in all kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah. Absorbing
Um,
everything.
exactly, exactly. And now I feel like I'm at a place where obviously I'm still absorbing and I'm still learning a lot, but I'm at a place of like trying to fine tune my strategy and my style, and just being able to take the time to like rewatch everything and read things and things like that. So I'd say that I probably at the most maybe trade 4 5 hours of the day,
Okay.
and then the rest is building playbooks and going over my trades and things like that.
Fantastic. So, you've given us some details. Why don't you step me through sort of a day in your typical trading life? You say you start at sort of 5:30, so it'll be about 8:30 market time, so about an hour before
Mhm.
the market opens. How do you pick your
Yeah.
stocks?
I definitely listen to the pre-market show on
Okay.
BBT. See kind of what everybody else is looking at. I also usually read through CNBC pre-market movers, and see what's gapping up, what's gapping down, what the catalysts are for all of these things. Um, I look at briefing.com because they usually have some things as well. I'll look at Bloomberg. So I do a lot of news outlet research in the morning while I'm listening to the pre-market show. And typically, if something pops up on the BBT scanner that's like gapping up, and the BBT mods are talking about, and I've seen it on one of my other news outlets, and I was already kind of interested in it, then it becomes like more of a top priority for me.
Okay.
Because I've found it on my own, and then I've been like confirmed by the BBT community. Um,
And that's how
and
you
so that
typically pick your stocks, is sort of that correlation of it's in the news and people are talking about it type.
Yeah, I
Okay.
definitely do. I'm like definitely a catalyst trader.
Okay.
And the other thing is obviously then it comes down to technicals. So I'm looking at, is it about to break out of a high volume day? Like from the past, like the range that it has set, is it about ready to break out or into where that high volume day was? Those are ones that I'm like usually really interested in it. And then if there's something about like if it's breaking out of a downtrend or an uptrend, things like that. So yeah, so I pick it based on news and BBT, and then it comes down to chart technicals, and is it something that I'm actually interested in, and then I trade off of that.
Right. Now, from a technical perspective, are there any specific indicators that you like to use? Because we have a lot of different people that use different methods in our room and of course across the markets. What's your favorite sort of indicator? Moving averages, pivot levels, VWAP, all the above?
Uh, so I think I've gone through a lot over the course of the past year or so, and I went from like using Fibonacci all the time,
Right.
um, which I actually don't even use anymore. And people are always asking me about it, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't really use it anymore. But because that's like the beginning of like your trading journey. You're looking at MACD, RSI. You're just like, what works for me.
Right.
Um, and every once in a while, I'll look at RSI or MACD or something, but it's not my sole indicator anymore. Where I'm at right now is strictly tape, L2, and levels.
Okay.
So, I heard, Mike Belfiore say one time in a video or in his book, I think, that you could take away all of his charts and he could trade off of tape and L2 alone and levels. And I just found that so fascinating that I was like, let's see if that's the thing, like, and because candlesticks and things like that are lagging indicators, trying to understand tape, as a leading indicator just seemed like the right move for me. Like I wanted to know what was going to happen. Like
Right.
where are we going? And it's hard. It's very, very hard
Sure.
to learn and read it. It takes a lot of just staring at it. But right now I'd say, yeah, tape, L2, and levels are my number one.
Wow. So, I mean, to me, those are hallmarks of a true day trader because you're really focused on the immediate, but that's a good thing. Oh, we're taking a drink. Sorry, I better do that too.
Oh yeah. Gotta stay hydrated.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with a good little drink while we're having a conversation. So yeah, but I mean those indicators I think are ones that you're right. They're tough. They're tough to learn. Like level two, a lot of people talk about it, but it's tough to get good information. I found as well about exactly how it works because it's interpretive, I believe, and it's very subjective. Have you found any resource that specifically helped you read level two, or is it something you learned just from watching?
Just from watching and
Yeah.
watching a lot of YouTube videos where other traders go through their trades and talk through what they saw or what they were
Okay.
looking for. Um, that's been really helpful. So that then when I see something, and then if I see someone else see something
Right.
that's similar to me, I'm like, okay, we saw the same thing, and like that makes sense to me.
Right.
Um, yeah, and it's just been a lot of, I mean, it's been a lot of staring at it and a lot of like trial and error. Like, okay, I think this is what this signal is, and then it doesn't work, but the next time it does, and it's just really like breaking it down and fine tuning it. But yeah, you're right. There's not a ton of information on it because like everybody says, Thor says it all the time. It's an art. It's
Yeah.
it really is an art, and the way I interpret the tape might not be the way someone else interprets the tape. So it's really is just figuring out what works for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I do honestly believe trading is that intersection of art and science. Like a lot
Mm,
of things, we think the medical profession is all science based, and certainly there's a lot of, we've put a lot of measures and scientific activity into it. But if you ever talk to a doctor about how they diagnose and how they figure out what's going on, there's as much art as there is science to it because it's experiential. It's about,
right.
putting together all of the academic learning, but then applying it to the real world, which in the markets are, it's a different day every day, right? I mean, what you see and what works today might not work tomorrow. Uh,
Totally. And the biggest thing is, time and experience. Like
right,
just the same as like, with being a doctor and experimenting in science and all that stuff. Like you're not gonna obviously didn't find the cure for COVID overnight. Like so I don't know how anyone expects to become a millionaire overnight with trading.
right.
Like there's so like screen time is so important.
Well, you're not going to get an argument from me. That I would agree. Number one thing, no screen time, guys. If you're listening, make sure that you spend the time in front of the screen and just absorb the information and sort of come to your own conclusions because you've got to be able to process and analyze that such that you can then make smart decisions off of it. And it's
Yeah.
tougher. It's if it was easy, then those courses they're selling you online for the whatever thousands of dollars would actually work, right? If it
Yeah.
was easy, everybody would do it.
Exactly. Just like weight loss pills. If those actually worked, everybody would do it.
Exactly. So, well, good. Well, you found a method that seems to be working for you, and that's great. Now, you sounds like you also came to it through a lot of trial and error, right? Going through
Mm.
Fibonacci and other indicators, you've settled on something that works for you now. But you've also had the opportunity then so far to be through a couple of market cycles. I mean, we're still in this market that will not stop. I mean, it's a Friday today. We just hit new all-time record highs on the S&P 500. This market just will not stop. But we've had some pullbacks and some changes in sort of market feel, I would say, and market reaction over the last few months. How have you adapted to that? Have you found that does that tend to throw you for a loop and you have to reset, or are you finding that you're able to adapt easily when the market changes?
Um, you know, It does throw me for a little bit of a loop, because you get so, you know, I don't want to say biased, but you get so used to something.
Right.
Like, for so long it was just like, buy it, it's going up.
Exactly. Oh, the old two-finger trading, right? I just buy here and I sell here and it all works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. It's an adjustment, and but it excites me, and this is one of the things that really excites me about trading is that it is ever changing,
Mm.
and because I get bored so easily. Like, you can teach me how to chop a carrot, and I'm like, okay, cool, what's next? Like, but with trading, it's like every day is a new day, and every day is a clean slate. So you don't have to drag yesterday into today. You get to start fresh every day, but every day is also such a huge learning opportunity because it's different every single day. Like, it's not like I'm cooking the same meal every single day like I would, in a kitchen. It's a whole new ball game, and I think that's what's really great about it. And the market's changing the way that they do in these different cycles is just, I think it's awesome. Like, it's hard, but like, I love hard things. Like, I don't want to be bored. Like, give me a challenge, I want to do it.
There's always a new market recipe to discover, isn't there? So,
Exactly.
it's funny. I found that the people that are most successful in trading, I've had a chance to do a lot of these podcast interviews, and they always tend to make analogies back to their experience, no matter what it is. Whether you
Mm,
come from being a chef or a general contractor, or you're a stylist, or I've talked to a lot of people with amazingly varied careers and backgrounds, and they always seem to manage to tie their past experience into their trading in one way or another in a way that makes sense to them, and I think that's
mm,
fantastic. You made me think of it when you talked about cutting a carrot, and like, but it's good because it shows you like trading it's a very unique activity, but a lot of the skills are transferable because there's a lot of
mhm.
stuff that you've learned elsewhere that you can apply that people don't often think about.
And on the other side of that, there are things that you've learned that now you need to unlearn.
Mm.
So,
So give me an
for me,
example of those.
for me, when I first started, because I've worked at blue collar for so long, and really the way to succeed is to just power through and to go fast and, you know, burn yourself at both ends of the candle,
Right.
and when I got into trading, like, that was such my mentality, is just like push through. I have such a high pain tolerance, such a high stress tolerance, and it was just like I'd be losing, and it was just like I could just push through. I could push through, um, and that was something that I needed to like relearn. That this is different. Like, the market doesn't care if you're
Right.
pushing, really hard, or if you're taking thousands of trades, or like whatever it is. The market does not care. So you have to like rein it in and figure out how to calm yourself down.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily like, you know, first one there like wins. It's like
Right.
consistency and steady progression wins. And that has not been my mentality ever in life. Like, I'm always like, I gotta be there, I gotta be first, you know.
Right.
So that's been interesting to like unlearn those kinds of things.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's a great example and a great statement. You're right. You have to unlearn some of this stuff as well. So, but that leads to psychology, which is one of those underrated elements in trading. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you'd think it's a technical exercise, right? If I learn how to trade, that's about learning technical setups and the way things work, which is part of it, as we've talked about. But maybe you can talk about the psychological aspects, because I find that, like you said, managing that, yourself and managing your own brain, if you will, is really the path to success long term. How have you managed your own psychology to be successful?
Yeah, it's really interesting for me because ever since I like had that life kind of changing moment when I was back in my 20s, like,
Right.
to overhaul my life, I've been on like this path of trying to better myself.
Are you saying you're
And
not
it's
in your
something
20s? I don't believe it.
I'm not, but everybody thinks I am. But honestly, Peter, if you were here, you would see this gray hair on top of my
Oh.
head.
All
No,
right.
I'm
Well,
in my,
we'll leave it at that then. All right.
no,
You're 20. 2012. You're
sure.
yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm in my mid 30s.
Okay.
But
Well, you're
hey,
2015 then.
this is what plant-based does for people, right? It just makes them look young forever.
Fantastic. I like the
um,
plug. All right, keep it
yeah,
up.
there you go. So yeah, I've always like really enjoyed bettering myself. I've always been the one to read like self-help books and just like, you know, tons of nonfiction things. And um, when I got into trading and I started to realize these things about myself that I had never recognized, like it really shines a spotlight on where you struggle and
Mm,
like the things that you've been able to just brush under the rug.
right.
Um, and so, you know, for me, you know, patience, obviously, um, rethinking, like I'm always very quick to jump into things. And this has taught me that that's one of those things that I need to work on. So taking a step back and looking at psychology, I think it's a huge part. I think it's more like 90% of trading, right? Because like you can have all of the tools in the world, you can have the best platform, you could have hundreds of thousands of dollars, but if you don't know yourself and you don't know how to control yourself, then you're screwed. Like you might get lucky, you might get really, really lucky, but I think knowing yourself is so, so key in this game. And I think it's super important. You know, we are so lucky to have Creda as one of the,
Mm,
performance coaches in BBT. And she has been so incredible in, shining a light on things that need to, things that you can do to help yourself. So, a couple of things that I've put into practice that I've learned from her is, the affirmations. Like
right.
I used to write affirmations, but I never thought about listening to them. So I have them recorded in my own voice, and it's super weird.
Yeah.
And
I do it
um,
too, and it is weird,
yeah,
but it's
it's so weird.
surprisingly effective, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's almost like the only person you'll ever listen to is your own voice. So, like, if someone else is recording it, you probably wouldn't listen to it. Or you probably wouldn't take it in. But yeah, so that, and then like, I've always been one to, do vision boards and manifestation exercises and things like that. But I've never written it down and recorded the audio and played the audio to myself. So those kinds of things have been really interesting and great to like amplify my psychology and really put me in the mindset for trading and to remember why I'm trading and to
Right.
remember that it's a long game and you're not an idiot, you're just learning. you know
Right. So with it being that important, and I agree with you completely that it's 80-90% of the game is managing that psychological, aspect to it. Um, what advice would you have for a new trader who's like, how do you get started at learning the psychology in your experience? Like what, if somebody says, look, I want to figure out this trading thing, I've got all the tools, now what? What would you direct them so that they could figure out how to start to learn themselves, get to know themselves better?
I think something that someone could start with is obviously when you start trading, you're going to be in sim and you're going to be like taking all kinds of trades and you're going to be wild and,
Hmm.
all this stuff. And I think that one thing you can do is you can have a recorder on and you can talk out loud while you're trading, um,
Great.
and play it back because you'll find that you have called yourself names, you've called the market names, you've told yourself out loud, I probably shouldn't take this, and then you took it. And I think that like being able to see those things that are happening when you're so enveloped in the process of trading that it's hard to sometimes see them. And so if you can't immediately recognize these problems that you're having and that you need to work on, I think recording yourself talking while you're trading can be a huge benefit and help you pull out those things that now you need to work on. And then once you've found the things that you need to work on, then you can figure out what the tools are to work on those things. So whether it's, affirmations or visualization exercises, or you just need to meditate more because you're just angry, like,
Yeah.
whatever it is, like, yeah, yeah, I think that's probably the advice I would give.
No, and that's sage advice. I love it. Yeah, I always tell people the same thing. Record it. You'll be surprised. And talk, even just talking out loud, whether you record and play it back or not. It's
Mm,
amazing when you force yourself to speak the actions that you're about to take or the things that you're thinking. That
mhm.
sometimes, like I will do it. And again, you got to be careful. There's other people in your trading location that are going to think you're crazy. But talking to yourself out loud, sometimes you'll hear yourself and you're like, what am I doing? Like, or what am I saying? That's not, I don't want to do that, right? But if you
Yeah,
didn't say it out loud, you might just convince yourself to do it. Whereas sometimes when you actually hear yourself, you're like, that's probably not a good idea. Let's not do that.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of similar to like I've thought about that in a way of like if someone was sitting next to me and I was
Right.
talking through the trade and trying to tell them how to take the trade,
Yep.
what would I say? And if I'm saying out loud, that doesn't, I don't know, I'm unsure about that, then why would you ever tell someone else to do it?
Right. No, good. I mean, that's great advice and something that people should practice more of. So, um, trading, and you make me think. You when you said having someone sit beside you, obviously we don't, right? Because we're all sitting
Mhm.
here at home alone, and like you don't have that built-in coach and that support. Have you found it isolating? I mean, as someone who works in restaurants and have worked with people throughout what you did, have you found it difficult to just sit alone in front of a computer?
Um, you know, it's less difficult as far as like socialization goes.
Hmm.
It's more difficult for me physically. Like
Okay.
I just want to be moving and doing stuff. So that's something I have to be very mindful of and aware of that like I just need to get up and go for a walk or I need to go for a
Right.
run or I need to cycle or something. But the socialization aspect it has been kind of it's been helped by being a part of a community, which I think is so important. I
Hmm.
don't know that I would be where I am if I hadn't started with BBT. Like just to have people around you that are talking about the same thing you're talking about because it's trading not only is it isolating as far as being in front of a computer by yourself all day, but most, I want to say 99% of people don't know what the hell you're talking about when you bring it up to them. Like they have no idea. So like even just being with people that like can speak the same language as you,
Yeah.
I think is super important. And then from BBT, I became a part of a couple different Slack groups and had the support of those Slack groups to share trades with people and go over, goals and all these things that we're working on. Um, it's interesting, even though that like my other job, I would be more likely to be in the presence of other people. I feel a greater sense of community being a trader than I have as a chef because
Wow.
being a trader, like everybody wants everybody to win. Like everybody wants everybody to do a great job and we support each other and help each other. And it's not like if I make $100 today from the market, like that doesn't mean that the market has $100 less to give you. Like
Right.
we can all make money if we like, play our
Yeah.
trades right and work on all the things we need to work on. But there's a lot of other jobs and being a chef included in that where it's cutthroat. I mean, you got to be the best just to like, get a job or,
Right.
um, you know, people are trying to be better than each other in that sort of way. And yeah, I found such a huge sense of community and support being a trader, and it's been really nice. And honestly, I cannot wait for the world to go back to somewhat of a normal thing so that we can all hang out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the things that we do. I feel like we're plugging the community a lot, which is not intentional, but it's a big part of our trading experience, I guess, isn't it?
Hmm.
But yeah, one of the things we do are those meetups it's great. I love getting out there and being able to go and meet with our traders and face to face because it puts a face to a lot of the screen names that you see and
Yeah.
it is sort of a different social aspect. You mentioned about 99% of the people have no idea what you're talking about. You're absolutely right. It's funny that way in trading, right? Like it's important to find people that even if you're just making a joke, sometimes you make a market joke and nobody gets it, right? Because they're just not trading in the markets. Or I get the other thing, less so now because of course I don't get to see anybody with COVID. But you ever go to like a social event and people are like, "Oh, you're a trader. Hey, do you think I should buy Apple long term?"
Oh my God. I mean, it happens even when you're not at a social event. Like, talk about like GME, right? Like,
Yeah,
my God, GameStop. The amount of text messages I got,
right,
like, and I get them now too, just from, my parents or, friends, like, should I
right.
invest in this thing? And I'm like, I don't think you understand what I do.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's like I have no idea. Yeah, that's always my
I'm,
answer. I don't know.
I'm like the technical indicators today say sure, why not? But I don't know what to tell you about this
Exactly.
company.
I always tell them. I say, you ask me at about 9:20 tomorrow morning before the markets open, then I'll tell you. What to do over the next couple of hours, maybe. but more
Yeah.
than that, I have no idea. So
Mhm.
I used the
Mhm.
analogy the other day to say, it's sort of like, like we're the groundskeepers, let's say at a big stadium, and someone comes up and says, "Hey, who do you think's going to win the Super Bowl?" And you're like, "I don't know. I just keep the field. Why do you think I would know who's going to win based on being a groundskeeper?" It's sort of the same to me, the same analogy here in the markets.
Totally.
Very
Totally.
different job. Anyways, awesome. Last question I really, really wanted to ask you was that, in trading, it's typically been considered sort of or typically has been, Wall Street seen as this male-dominated, ego-driven type environment. Have you found any barriers sort of being a woman in trading? Because the markets don't care, right? The markets will take
Mm.
your money no matter who you are, and if you're good, hopefully they'll give you some winnings. How's it been for you?
Um, it's been good. It's funny because when I first started with BBT, I was really nervous about being female in a
Hmm.
very, very male dominated
Yeah.
industry. So when I signed up to be a part of BBT, I created a guy's name for my
Right.
account. And I went under that name for, I don't know, a month or so. And until I realized how supportive people are in general in the trading world. And I was like, okay, I can be a female in this industry. um, but yeah, I kind of like being like the outlier, like, you know, just to be like women, like to show people women can do this too.
Hmm.
Like it isn't a male, like it's not completely a male industry. Like there are women traders out there, and we can trade just as well as men can. And I think the more women we have stepping up, being like, I can trade, I think it will, over time, hopefully change the imbalance that there seems to be.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of those perceptive imbalances because you're right. I mean, women can trade at least as well as men, and in our room, it always amazes me how many women there are. I honestly don't know, but I've got to believe we're getting closer to parity than people would think.
Mm,
Because again, being able to do it remotely, all of the tools we've got to work from home, it is a great equalizer, not only between genders, but from social, economic backgrounds and geography, and it doesn't matter anymore, right? You can trade no matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter what background you come from. So,
exactly.
and that's one of the things that I love about it. Well, Megan, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today. It's fantastic.
I
Um,
really enjoyed being here. Thank you for asking me to be a part of this.
well, it's our pleasure, and I'll raise a glass to you and toast with a drink. So, cheers to your
Cheers.
trading journey and your future success. You got to take a drink, or it's bad luck. So before you put it
Mm,
down.
it's right.
There we go. All right. Well, thanks so much. And we'll be back again with another episode soon on Talk with Traders. Thanks, Megan. Take care.
Thanks, Peter.